Hi, my name is Frank and welcome to my woodturning channel. As you can see, I've got a very large burl here. This is for sure the largest burl I've ever come across. Someone dropped it off the other day and wanted me to do a bit of a commission to turn this into something for their new place that they're building up in northern Ontario. The piece is so large it had to be lifted with a tractor to put on the back of a truck, and was just dropped off here the other day. I'm hoping to get 2 or 3 pieces out of this. There's one small burl there. There's one sort of large burl here, and then there's a larger burl back on the back of this. So hopefully I can get this cut up. Normally I would cut this up outside, but it's winter time here. Lots of snow outside, so I blocked it up on wood, and I'm hoping I can chainsaw it here in the garage and not make too much of a mess here. The first thing I'm going to do is just walk all around the piece and just have a look at where am I going to make the cuts. This is kind of like a diamond in the rough, so I'm kind of looking for where's the best spot so I can get the most out of the finished pieces I cut out of it. I'm set up with all my safety gear. I've got my helmet on with the screen, and I've got the piece blocked up so that I hopefully won't hit the concrete floor while I'm chainsawing it. Well, after a bit of cutting, these are the 3 pieces I ended up with. They're reasonable sized pieces. The wood is very, very punky in some areas. Yeah, you'll see from some images I included here. If I take an awl and stick it in the wood, it'll go in quite deep. So we'll see what we can get out of these pieces, but I think they're all going to need a bit of tender loving care with some epoxy and wood hardener, that sort of thing. All 3 pieces are basically going to be turned the same way, so I'm just going to focus on this medium-sized burl first. And even though it's medium-sized, it doesn't quite turn on the lathe. My lathe capacity is 25 inches, and 2 of the ends are just hitting, so I'm just going to saw off this little chunk on this side and check it for clearance, so that side's good. And now you can see the other side hit, so I got to take a little bit of chunk off of that side as well. I'm just roughing out the back with the 5/8 inch bowl gouge and just taking off some of the high spots, and later I'll do a little bit of work to create a tenon, and all of the pieces are basically going to be done the same way. The bottom of the burl will be roughed out, there'll be a tenon created. We'll finish off the bottom and then turn around and do the inside. Now I have found that the wood is a lot more wet than I suspected. I thought this burl was quite dry. So for sure this thing has to be just rough turned, left to dry, and then returned later to final shape. Now out here on the very ends of the piece where you're hitting a lot of wood and air, interrupted cut, you need a nice steady hand here, just taking a little bit off at a time. You don't want to get in trouble here by taking too much. You can see the tenon size there is quite large. I'm using the number 6 jaws on the one-way stronghold chuck. Those are the largest jaws I have. That'll just help stabilize the piece a bit when I turn it around. Now that the back or bottom of the piece has been roughly formed out, I'm going to take it off and turn it around and start doing the inside of the burl. It's always good to use tailstock support on something this large. You just don't want to risk the piece coming out of the tenon when you're in the middle of turning it. Every burl is going to be a little bit different depending on the shape of the burl, the way it's been cut, that sort of thing. So you really don't know what you're going to get exactly until you start making some cuts and getting into the wood. This part here is very punky, so I'm being very, very careful not to take too much wood off, just so the piece will not, I won't have any really large pieces that come off. And all three of these burls are definitely going to need a lot of wood stabilizing with some sort of a resin or epoxy or wood stabilizer, wood hardener of some sort. I just work slow and steady at this, first working on the largest outside diameter, getting it to the thickness I like, and then I leave mass in the center, and now here I'm taking some of that center mass out, and then I'll continue down the side wall to my rough shape that I'm after in this particular case. I'm getting pretty close to the final shape that I'm after here, and it's come along okay, but I have noticed that there's quite a big flaw running through the center of the piece, so I'm being particularly careful just to make light cuts. In this video, all I'm going to show is the roughing out process. So this will be part 1. In part 2 of the video, once these pieces are dry, I will show you how I add some hardener or fill it with epoxy just to get a finished piece. So stay tuned for part 2 at some point in the future. This gives you a better view of that flaw running right down the center of the piece. So the two halves of this will come right apart if I don't do something with that. So after this dries, I'm going to have to fill that crevice with epoxy to keep this together. And here's the finished roughed out piece. Turn it all around so you see it from every angle. And I'll point out the flaw again. So stay tuned for some images. I will show this particular piece, and then I'll show images of the other two large pieces that I did, all needing some sort of work afterwards in terms of either putting epoxy in a crevice or hardening up the surfaces.